Welcome to the chapter on blood vessels. Here's an overview. We're looking at the structure of the vessels, the arteries and the veins first. Then we're going to discuss capillary structure, what they do. And then we move towards spending some time looking at the lymphatic vessels, how they are made up of, since they bring blood or the fluid back to the heart that will be dumped into the blood system. And lastly, we'll look at blood pressure and taking blood pressure. Blood vessels channel blood through the body. They connect areas of substance exchange, which are capillary beds, with the heart. I look at them like they're the freeway system of the body where substances can be shipped through it easily, fast, and through very, very different areas and multiple places. It's not like a nerve that is traveling one way from one destination to the next destination at a very fast speed. Blood vessels carry substances much smaller and much slower, but they go to many more different places. Arteries are the vessels that lead blood away from the heart, and they are high pressured vessels. So the heart pumps the blood out. That's a high pressure when the blood is forced out of the heart. So those vessels need to be able to withstand that pressure. And then veins carry the blood back to the heart, and they are known to be low pressure vessels because once the blood has gone through the tissues and exchanged the substances, then there's no pressure inside, no hydrostatic pressure inside that system. The hydrostatic pressure, the water pressure, or the blood pressure is created by the heart. When we look at the vessel structure, they both are made up of three different coats. We have an inner coat, we can call that the tunica intima, or sometimes we also call that the endothelium. This is a layer of endothelial cells, which is an epithelial tissue, and they are anchored to a basement membrane, which is connective tissue. Again, we always have that structure where the epithelial tissue is connected on the base to the connective tissue via a basement membrane. And then we have a middle coat in the vessels, and the middle coat is the tunica media. That is composed of smooth muscle fibers that are filled with a lot of elastic fibers, especially the high pressure vessel where the blood straight comes out of the heart. Those vessels need to be able to expand a little bit, and that's the elastic fiber letting that happen. Expand and then contract, or recoil, we should call it. And then the outer coat is the tunica adventitia, and that is composed of connective tissue that embeds the vessels to its surroundings. Ejecting blood by the heart into the aorta creates a hydrostatic force of more than 120 millimeters of mercury, because that is the systolic measuring that we do when we're looking at a peripheral vessel. So that is actually a little bit wrong. It's more than 120 milligrams of mercury. Arteries have well-developed tunica media, that's the muscle part, and that either contracts or it can relax. And what that does, it will regulate the blood flow to an area as well as the pressure. When that tunica media contracts, we call that vasoconstriction, because the vaso is the vessel that constricts, and when that vessel is making itself bigger, the lumen, the inside is called the lumen, that gets bigger, then is called vasodilation. Elastic fibers embedded in them, in the tunica media, let the wall stretch slightly when the blood is forced into those vessels. So I just explained that. They recoil, so they vasoconstrict slightly again, or they come back to a neutral when the heart is relaxed. And what that does, it pushes the blood even forward through the vessels. So the blood pumps about, 60 plus times, 70 plus times per minute, and each time it contracts, that force makes those vessels go wider, and when the heart relaxes, those recoil, and that recoil in the aortic arch will push the blood forward and smooth out that forceful contraction that happens 70 times per minute or so. So that thing, that recoil of those elastic fibers, is called the elastic recoil. And then the hydrostatic pressure drops almost to nothing as we approach the capillaries. And in the capillaries, we have a substance exchange. The veins' job is to channel the blood back to the heart. So they have a thinner wall, and they don't need to be pipe-like. They more need to be baggy-like to channel the blood through the tissue to go back to the heart. And we will talk about that coming up. Well, this is what we talk about. How do the veins bring that blood back? So the arteries have the heart to pump the blood. That's easy. The veins will bring the blood back as they channel it through the body, and they have valves. And those valves are one structure that helps them do that. The valves, they open towards the heart, but they don't open downward. So the blood can go up towards the heart, but it cannot be pushed downward again towards the extremity of where it's coming from. So that prevents backflow. That makes sure the blood flows in one direction. And the valves are similar to heart valves. They are endothelial folds that project into the lumen. Then a lot of the veins go through skeletal muscle, and when they contract, they squeeze those blood vessels, and that pushes the blood forward towards the heart, because the blood cannot go back down, because the valve is going to stop that from happening. And by the way, if you got issues with the valves, you will have varicose veins. And that's when those valves get flabby and they don't work so well. So the muscle doing the help is called the muscular pump. And you got a picture there to the right of the text that shows that. And then we have one more help, or the veins have one more help, and that is when we inhale, the pressure in the chest drops slightly, causing large veins near the heart to expand and fill up with more blood. It's kind of a weird one to understand. But the expansion of the lungs will sort of a little bit suck the blood towards the heart. And that is known as the respiratory pump. Then we get to the capillaries. And these are areas where gases are exchanged. Gases such as oxygen and carbon dioxide. Or substances such as glucose and waste products. They consist of a tunica intima. So they do not have the tunica media versus the tunica adventitia. They only have the tunica intima. Capillaries form interweaving networks called capillary beds, and the blood flowing through them create a microcirculation of fluid exchange. So an arteriole, which is a small artery, comes by, and off of that we have some offshoots. Those offshoots are called medarterioles. They're vascular shunts. So the blood comes from the arteriole and goes into these vascular shunts. And then off of there, different capillaries come off of it and create a bed of capillaries, which then, since the capillaries are only a tunica intima, they will be leaky. They'll leak that fluid out. The medarteriole connects the arteriole with a venule. A venule is a small vein at the other end of it, the capillary bed. And what's interesting is we have precapillary sphincters, and you can sort of see that. They are right where the vessels come off the medarteriole, and when they can squeeze and they can close those capillaries off so the blood does not go into them when this particular tissue does not need the oxygen or the glucose. So we can be very, very specific this way. Who needs oxygen and who needs glucose? Not all the tissues in the body are perfused at the same time. When you are running, for example, your perfusion is in the muscle, much, much greater than in the gut. That's why it's not a great idea to go running out after you eat, because you need the blood in the gut. And so we have in the system many mechanisms that we can make sure the blood gets shunted to the areas of need. Then the lymphatic vessels run parallel to the veins and help them pick up fluid that is pushed out of the capillaries and has not returned back to the veins. Because the main driving force of return of fluid from back to the veins from the capillary bed is the osmotic pull. The osmotic pull is opposing the hydrostatic pressure. As the blood comes down to the capillaries, the pressure is what pushes the fluid out of the capillaries, and then the osmotic pull will bring the fluid back. And basically what we do is we have certain large molecules, solutes, they are left in the capillaries. And when the fluid gets less than on the outside, on the inside of the capillary, those large solutes will pull the fluid back to the venous system. So it's an osmotic pull. It's kind of visualize the salt on a tomato, how it pulls out the water. It's the same thing, except the salt at this point is solute and the tomato surface is the inside of the vessel. But you can see how a hydrostatic pressure is more forceful than an osmotic pull. You can visualize that, I think. And because of that, we will also need a system that picks up excessive fluid that has not been brought back to the veins. And that's the lymphatic system, the lymphatic vessels. We have lymphatic capillaries that pick up the fluid. They have inward going slits. You can see that on the picture next to it. They don't open to the outside. They don't push stuff out, they only be able to bring fluid in. And so those inward opening slits let the fluid go into the lymphatic vessel, and once it's inside the lymphatic vessels, we call it lymph, L-Y-M-P-H. And the lymph vessels have valves, and so as the lymph gets pushed towards the heart, it is filtered. Well, it's not going to be pushed back down where it's coming from because of the valves, but it also is filtered through various little filters, and those are lymph nodes, and they have a lot of white blood cells in them. And the white blood cells look at that lymph as it comes by and say, is this clean or is there some problem with it? And the immune system then, the white blood cells, can attack problems right there. And that's a very good thing. And so that's a part. The lymphatic system is helping the blood substance of the blood be back to the heart, but also it helps through that process with the immune function. It's a very great problem, very great situation that way. The only problem with the lymph nodes is when you got cancer in one area, they help spread the cancer to other areas of the body, and that can be a vehicle for a metastasis of a cancer, and that's not a good thing.